Hello everyone, for today's video I'd like to show in a bit of detail how the game handles wagon physics and how trains move around and how that's actually all managed. So I've got a bit of a debug visual going on here with these circles. You can see how the green and red circles are where the wagons are coupled together. So if I disconnect these two, you'll see this one now is disconnected on both ends, this one's disconnected here, and then when I push them back together, they recouple and they both appear green. And these circles that are above the wagons are showing some information about its state. So grey means that it has actually gone to sleep. So all these wagons are basically sleeping and there's no calculations being done, just to save performance. If they're sitting perfectly still, they don't need to do anything. But you'll notice if I push them around, they'll all wake up and you'll see this green circle appear. And then if I let them wait again, they'll all go to sleep. So that green circle is what I've called the force creator in the train. So a train in code is a whole bunch of wagons that are connected together. So this is one train in front of me, even though it doesn't actually have a locomotive in it, it's just a bunch of wagons. But in terms of physics, it is one solid train. So as I move these around, there is the force creator, which will control how all the rest of the wagons move. So instead of each wagon doing its own calculations, one of them will do the moving and then update all of them at the same time. And funnily enough, this actually wasn't how rolling line always used to work. Back when it first came out, anyone might remember there was slack. There was actually a bit of give between the two wagons. Like if you bumped two wagons together or shifted them away, they'd all shift independently. That was a different system where each wagon was controlling its own movement instead of the whole lot in one go, but that came with a lot of problems. It actually caused far more trouble than it was worth, and I think maybe a few years ago I made the choice to officially switch it over and get rid of that, and that actually got rid of some of the worst bugs rolling lines ever had, which was how trains would merge together, and that was especially bad on low frame rates. And that was all caused by the fact that individual wagons were doing their own movement, and all it would take is for those to get slightly out of sync and you'd start getting trains merging together. And it was very common to have trains slowly merge over time. If they were going in circles off somewhere on your map, you'd go back and check on them and they'd all gone out of sync and merged together. So this newer system completely fixed that, and now that doesn't really happen anymore. Trains are all controlled in one go. There's still a few sort of strange situations where trains can merge together, and most often that is caused when force creators meet other force creators. So you can have more than one. You know, I can have both of these, but if I bump them together, then they will override each other. So I can sort of bump these around, you can see what's going on. You can have two force creators at the same time, but then once they hit together, one of them will take priority over the other, and there'll always just be one in the entire train. So if I push from each end, you'll see that happening. Now, this recent update that is just about to come out is adding a new feature into this system, which is gravity. So at the moment, all these trains are on flat ground. They're not affected by gravity at all. But over here, I can show a bit of an example of what happens when gravity gets involved. So there's a new display, which is a circle, and I'll just show you with one of these. When there is a blue circle, that means the freight wagon is starting to be controlled by gravity instead of anything else. So you can see, yeah, it's probably going to derail all of these and crash into them, and then eventually it's going to couple with the rest. That's because when a freight wagon is moving fast enough, it will actually derail what's in front of it instead of just bumping straight into it, which is just a fun thing. Basically, it's more fun to crash through a line of trains than it is to just collide with them at 100 kilometers an hour and continue as if nothing happened. But if I remove a few of these, you'll be able to see how a wagon actually slows down. So at the top, it starts to receive gravity, gravity speeds up, and then it will keep on rolling down, and then once it gets to around here, it will slow down, and then it will stop and go to sleep. And of course, you know, you can have other wagons bump into it and all that stuff. But if you have gravity being controlled by more than one wagon, they will start to get out of sync again. So you have to do something interesting where when a wagon starts to get gravity applied to it, it has to actually check with all the wagons it's connected to and pick the best one to handle the gravity, and then have that one control it. So in this case, it will most likely pick the front one because that's the one that's the most downhill. So if I start pushing these over the edge, let's see, yep, the first one has started to receive gravity, and it's now going to act as the force creator because it has the green circle. It's going to control the rest of this train as it rolls down the hill and then stops. Yeah, and you'll see how it all stayed together. These wagons didn't get any merged or adjust themselves, they stayed as one unit. And I can show some other examples of if we try and push this up the hill a wee bit. There we go. Yeah, we'll see that the top one became the source of gravity. And the reason it chose that is because these other ones were on the flat, but this one was on a gradient. So if one of these was controlling the gravity, then it wouldn't actually need to move because it considers itself on the flat. But since this one was on the slope, it went through the whole train and checked which one was on the largest slope and then had that one control the gravity. Okay, here is another example where a locomotive is involved. Locomotives are a bit different. They don't respond to gravity at all. They will basically act as an anchor, and anything that's attached to them won't have gravity applied to it. So only free wagons that are not connected to any locomotive will be able to roll down a slope. So we can start controlling this train, and as you can see again, it's now the force creator. It is now controlling all the rest of the wagons in this train. But if we're halfway up the slope and decide to detach one of these wagons, you'll see it now has its own independent force, and it will start rolling down the hill. Yeah, so if we have this train parked still on the slope here, you can see none of them are moving, there's no force creators in the train. If we decouple this wagon here, you'll see how it now has its own force, and it will roll off that way on its own, and these ones will stay here. And of course we can move them around and stuff as well. Here's a bit of a half-pipe example where you can see as the train reaches a new slope, it picks a new force creator, and it'll always pick the highest one on the train. And you'll see it just sort of keeps moving around like this, and it'll probably just keep doing this perpetually because the physics aren't actually that realistic. A freight wagon can also have brakes. That is represented by this red circle. So this one here currently has its brakes enabled. That's another thing that's getting added with this gravity system. Brakes only apply to freight wagons because locomotives don't use gravity anyway. But you can press B to toggle brakes and then pop back on again, toggle it off, pop back on again. And you can see how as these force creators move around in the train, it'll actually check if there's any braked wagons in the line. So say I send this one down, it's currently got gravity, it's going to hit this and then realize there's a wagon with its brakes all the way down there, and it's all going to connect together into one big train, which is currently held still by this wagon. But if I take the brakes off, then the whole train's going to wake up again and start rolling down the hill and take out some wagons on its way. But yeah, that is basically the gist of how the wagon physics actually work. There's a lot more technical stuff in terms of how these wagons actually detect each other. Like there's actually these big colliders at the end of each wagon, and when they bump together, they basically check for wagons that are nearby, and then once they have a nearby wagon, they'll actually start paying attention to how close they are, and once they get close enough, they are coupled together. And decoupling is basically the same thing in reverse. Once they're split apart, it'll treat them as split apart until they clip back together again. But yeah, it's an interesting system. It's something that has been changed and modified and worked on just a lot throughout this game's history. I've gotten a remarkable amount of headaches out of just how the damn train movement system works. It's quite frustrating, but it's nice to see new things like this actually working quite well and coming together nicely. There are definitely a few bugs that I've found with gravity. There's a few unique situations where you can get trains to crash into each other when they probably shouldn't, or when they should have connected and decided not to, and I'm still looking into that. But overall, the system works really nice, and it's very satisfying to just see a bunch of wagons go rolling down the hill. Especially if you can ride on them. Yeah. And there's just a little bit of insight into how Rolling Line handles its wagon physics. So as you disable the brakes, oh shit.